Hi, I'm Lindsay from Lindsay Elliott Coaching. So I'm going to be recording a series of 4 videos all about time and busyness and what we can take off of our to-do list. Now, this isn't going to be your usual kind of time management videos in terms of, kind of chunking up your time, prioritising tasks, that sort of thing. This is going to be looking at it from the angle of busyness in the mind and what we can take off of our mental to-do list. And by that I mean what we believe we have to manage in life, what we believe is on our mental to-do list, either consciously or often unconsciously what's on our mental to-do list, so that we can free up our internal energy, our internal space, and free up our mind. Because so much of feeling busy, feeling time pressured, feeling overwhelmed and stressed and anxious and worried comes from having too much on our minds. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have busy lives. Look, it's the 21st century. Pretty much everybody has got a really busy life. There is a lot that we can be doing. There's a lot we could be doing. There's a lot we should be doing. There's a lot that we're responsible for. Life is pretty full on in the 21st century. But even with that said, there is kind of like we've got like what we've got to do over here, and then we've got all of our thoughts and feelings about that over here. And when we've got a really busy mind and believing that there's lots more things that we need to control and pay attention to and be hyper vigilant for over here, it makes what we've got to do, the actual practical stuff, feel way more overwhelming than it needs to be. So in these 4 videos, I'm going to point to what I think are, it's not an exhaustive list at all. It might end up being more than 4 videos. But what I believe are some of the most key and important things that we can take off of our mental to-do list so that we can begin to free up our mind, free up our energy, and just really create some more space. Because honestly, when the mind is a bit quieter, even if you've got a lot of things that you need to get done, when there isn't so much overthinking going on and you've just simply got things to be done that are much more neutral in terms of their emotion and their meaning, it makes life way easier to navigate. So, and because if you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed or in a lot of overthinking, or you're feeling really exhausted, maybe even burnt out, then I really hope that this video is going to be helpful for you, or in fact this series of videos is going to be helpful for you, because there really will be things that you are believing are your responsibility and are on your to-do list that you can absolutely take off of them. So the first one that we're going to look at is emotions and feelings and having to manage them. So I think it is quite a prevalent belief in our society that we should feel good most of the time, that it means something about us if we don't feel good or feel happy most of the time, and that certain emotions are unacceptable to feel, certain emotions are to be avoided, to be pushed away, and that indeed being hypervigilant for what we're feeling and having to manage what we're feeling is in some way, our responsibility. And I really want to debunk that myth, because from what I have explored myself and in my various trainings that I've done, is that nothing could be further from the truth than this. So it certainly seems as if there's something in emotions that requires our attention and requires our management. And I think that comes from a misunderstanding about our emotions. So number one misunderstanding that I see, and that I've experienced all of these myself, so so please don't think that I'm some perfected human, because I'm absolutely not. But one of the major misunderstandings that we have about emotions is that they mean something about us if we experience them. So if I have a lot of depression, if I have a lot of anxiety, if I have a lot of anger, that means I am an angry person, I am a depressed person, I am an anxious person. So they hold meaning, and even if we don't experience them a lot, but when they come around, they have some meaning about who we are. That's the first misunderstanding. The second misunderstanding I see a lot is that we're going to get stuck in them. That if we experience them, if we fully experience them, if we allow them to come in, that they're going to hang around and they are not going to move, and we're going to be stuck with this feeling that we don't like, we don't enjoy, is uncomfortable, we believe it means something about us, and it's going to get stuck there. The other misunderstanding that I see is that it's not safe, that certain feelings are inherently unsafe and are unwelcome and are to be resisted at all costs sometimes. And within that kind of like unsafe belief is also an I can't handle it. So we believe that there are certain emotions that we simply cannot handle, and therefore we need to manage them in some way. We need to make sure that we don't feel too anxious, that we don't feel too angry, that we don't get really depressed, or we need to believe that we need to be hypervigilant for them in some way. So that's just a few of the misunderstandings about emotions. Oh, and the other one that's just occurred to me, the major one, is that they're coming from the outside. So that it's our circumstances in life that make us feel things. And I've got lots of videos on this, when we really look in our experience, that isn't true. Because we can be in the same circumstance and have a completely different experience of it emotionally. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of those, because I've got other videos on those. But this is some of the misunderstandings that we believe about emotions that then I think lead us to then have the logical, and it can be unconscious, on our to-do list is I need to manage how I feel. I need to be vigilant for how I feel, and I need to manage it. And what if this isn't true? What if this is something that's on our mental to-do list that we can absolutely 100% take off of our to-do list? Because the truth about emotions is that they are inherently safe, not unsafe. That they are coming from our thinking, our thought in the moment, and that's moving all of the time. They're much less personal than we believe them to be. What if they don't mean anything about who we are as a person? And I'm going to talk in a minute generally about emotions that's going to sum all of this up. What if it's impossible to get stuck in an emotion or a feeling? And what if we are absolutely designed to handle any emotion, any feeling that passes through us? So all of the things that we're believing about emotions that means it looks like we have to manage them, if none of those things are true, then we don't have to manage our emotions in any way. All we need to do is allow them to be there, to experience them, and to let them move on. So from what I have learned and seen and looked in my own direct experience about emotions, is that they, and I know that we all logically know this, that they are an energy. They're not like a solid thing that we can pick up and put in a bucket and say, oh look, there's anger over there. We can't do that like we can with a cup. We know that they're an energy, but because we think they mean something about us and that we have to manage them and that they're going to get stuck, or that we're going to be, or that we can't handle them, they become so much more kind of important and front and centre than they actually need to be. But what if the simple truth about emotions and feelings is that they are an energy that is bundled up with thought? It's we could separate it out into two sides of one coin, but really they just come as one package of energy. So we think something and we then get to feel that, or we feel something and then we think something. It's all just bundled up in one energy. And we don't have any control over what we think. It's an energy that's flowing through us, and the emotion comes along with it, and we get to feel that sensation. So really what we're talking about is a sensation in the body that we have then labelled and given a name, like anxiety or worry or stress or anger or fear. But when we really pull back and have a look at it, it is an energy that is coming from our thinking, that is passing through us, and that is constantly on the move, always on the move. And if you really look in your direct experience, there's actually nothing that we have to do to move a feeling on. Now, if we struggle with anxiety or we struggle with anger, it might look like we need to do some deep breathing in order to calm down, or it might look like we need to meditate, or it might look like we need to take a walk around the block. And those things can sometimes be helpful in the moment. And I know that also I've been stuck in some anger or felt like I was stuck in some anger or anxiety. I've done those things and they haven't helped in the slightest. Because truly what is happening is that energy, that feeling, that sensation is moving all the time. It is like a river flowing the whole time through it doesn't come through us, I don't really know how it works, but it feels like it kind of flows in and it flows out. So it is like, this is one of my favourite metaphors for emotions, is that it is like the river flowing. Okay, so if you imagine right at the top, so if you imagine a mountain range somewhere high up in the mountains, and there's a river that starts up at that source. We can't see the source of it, but we know it's got a source somewhere, and it's constantly flowing all of the time. This water is pouring down and different things come in the water, and sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, but there's always water flowing. And it's moving and it's flowing past us, and it goes out to sea, and then it gets, recycled as rain. So this is how I see emotional energy. It's just constantly flowing. It's combined with our thinking and our feeling is one energy, and it's flowing all of the time. And what we innocently do is a certain bit of emotion comes down our river, and we get into the riverbed and we start looking at it and trying to stop it from coming. We hold it away, we try to dam it up. We say, no, I don't want that, I don't want anger, I don't want fear, and I've got to make sure that I don't feel anxious or worried or scared or depressed. And we innocently start to get into it, trying to manage it, and we kind of dam up its flow. Whereas if we were able just to be with the sensation of the feeling in the body, know that there is a story attached to it that's in the mind, and I'm going to talk about this a bit more in a minute, and that is going to flow regardless of what we do. And it's okay if we want to do something to help ourselves, but we don't have to, that it's going to move on. There is nothing we can do to make an emotion stay or a feeling stay, because if we could, we would all stick ourselves in love, in joy, in happiness, in peace, in calm all of the time, wouldn't we? And we just can't do that. And have you tried to feel peaceful and loving and calm, and then something's come along and the energy's changed again? And that can sometimes be the easier way to see it, is that we can't make a positive emotion or an emotion that we enjoy stay. We can't force that to be in us, and equally we can't force the negative emotion or the ones that we struggle with to move on or to stay either. It's all absolutely 100% flowing the whole time. This river does not stop flowing, and so therefore there is nothing that we need to do to manage that flow ever. All we need to do is to be metaphorically on the bank of the river, experiencing that emotion passing through. Now, what makes that easier is knowing that the misunderstandings that we have about emotion, particularly what it means about us, or that we can't handle it, or that it isn't safe, when those are cleared up, it makes it much easier to be on the riverbank, just letting the experience be there. And so what I really want to point to as a last point, because this video is getting a bit long, is that when we can just experience the sensation in the body without the thought story attached to it. So for example, I'm feeling anxious and the thought story attached to it is, oh no, that means I'm an anxious person, or oh, I haven't felt anxious for 3 weeks and now I feel anxious again, or oh, it must be because I've got to give that talk tomorrow, that's why I'm anxious, I really shouldn't give that talk because I'm really not going to be able to handle it. If we can just feel the sensation, know that the story's going to run, the mind's going to talk about it, it's going to try to add an overlay to it, but if we can just feel the sensation, the sweaty palm, the racing heart, whatever it is, in the body, if we can let that be there without resisting it, without diving into the story too much, just noticing the story, and if we can just let that be there, we can still go about our day in any emotion pretty much. Okay, maybe some, if you were in a panic attack, maybe not, or incredibly intense anger, but most emotions that bubble along, we can just let them be there, acknowledge them, feel them, but it's truly the story about it that's painful. It's the story that it's giving meaning, that it means something about us, that we can't handle it, that it's not safe, that it's not going to move, that I've got to do something about it. That's the bit that's painful. That's the bit that's difficult. So I would really encourage you just to see if you can see that it flows. Because if we can see that it flows, and to question whether everything you're believing about feeling is true, if we can question that it is literally a neutral energy, that's a different energy that's flowing all of the time, bringing loads of different stuff down your river, loads of different experiences, and if you can see that it flows and that there's a story attached, but you don't have to do anything about it, it honestly takes a massive amount of hypervigilance, of time management, of like, right, I've got to make sure I don't feel anxious, so I need to do. I've got to make sure that I don't feel anxious, I'm going to avoid that situation. I've got to make it and on it goes. So I have found my mind has got so much quieter now that I really feel I understand a deeper truth about emotions and thought and feeling. Because there is, if we don't have to manage our emotions, if it's okay to feel, really okay to feel whatever it is that's coming through, whether we like it, we may have a personal preference, but it's safe, it's not going to get stuck, it's not meaningful about who we are, the story isn't true, and it's going to move. When we know all of that really deeply, then we don't need to manage a single emotion that flows through us, not one. And I know for me personally, that took a massive amount off of my internal mental to-do list that I'd innocently made up. You know, I've got to manage how I feel. I've got to make sure I feel okay, because it was so important to feel okay. When that isn't so important, when we really understand about emotion, it is 100% liberating. So, I really hope that this video has been helpful. If it has, if you've watched all the way to the end, amazing, thank you so much. Do consider liking this video, really helps YouTube to pick it up, and also subscribing to my channel. And if you've got any comments or questions about this, please leave them in the description box below, and I have a whole playlist on feelings and emotions, so you can always check that out. So thanks so much for watching. Bye.